Members, good morning. You're all very welcome to the second part of our February monthly meeting. The first thing I'll call on Mr. Kilfeather to read out the COVID procedures.
Cathaoirleach and members, the National Standard Operating Guidance for Attendance at Council meetings provides that all in attendance be informed at the start of the meeting of the COVID-19 control measures in place. Just like to draw your attention to a few issues. Each person attending this meeting in person should have completed a COVID declaration form before entering the room. These forms will also serve as a record of attendance for contact tracing purposes if required. The meeting room must be prepared in accordance with the standard operating guidance. Face coverings must be worn by all attendees when entering and leaving the room. There should be no congregation in the building before or after the meeting. A one-way system is in place for entering and exiting the room. Exit will be via the side door. In compliance with the recommendations in the standard operating guidance, the meeting time will not exceed 1 hour and 55 minutes. Attendees must adhere at all times to the 2-metre physical distancing and follow the public health advice in relation to hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. A response plan is in place in the event that an attendee at the meeting feels unwell or is displaying possible COVID-19 symptoms. An isolation room has been provided. If anyone feels unwell during the meeting, you should alert myself or the meetings administrator, Kevin, and you will be escorted to the isolation room. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Kilfeather. Can I just ask all the members if you can mute your microphones, please, and maybe put your phones on silent. And if anyone wishes to speak, just to make sure, turn on your microphone, because the people that are zooming in cannot hear unless the microphones are on. So the first item there is to consider a follow motion by Councillor O'Boyle. Second, Councillor McSharry. Councillor O'Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. I received the report and I'm just in contact with some of the residents, so I'd just like to thank the Council for the report, and I will be back to them. But I do think that this is a great opportunity because of the work that is being done down in the Cartron area already with the roads, and that this could be a jewel in the crown of it. So I'd like to thank the Council for the response, and I will be back to them soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McSharry.
Yeah, thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I do like to support this motion. I'm not too enthusiastic about the response, Cathaoirleach. I see, however, there would be very significant issues to be addressed and considered in order to progress same, and then it almost gives excuses as to why it can't be done. The first thing I would ask, and I'm sure Councillor O'Boyle and other councillors in the area would want, is a meaningful engagement with the Residents Association, because I think what they're looking for really is maybe to extend it to the end of Ferndale and see if that's possible. So it's something that could be done in piecemeal. They don't want anything at the back of houses. So maybe if there was a meeting and, maybe if Councillor O'Boyle and myself and other councillors can engage with Emer Concannon and her staff and maybe see if we could have a meeting with the Residents Association just to see what's possible and not, because I'd refer councillors to the last 2 paragraphs of the report, and it wouldn't give me huge encouragement. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you. Mr. Kilfeather? Well, yeah, I just have Councillor Gibbons as well. Councillor Arthur Gibbons?
Go here, look. No, I was glad to hear that the walk has only been extended to Ferndale, and I would 100% agree with that, because I do know back between 2004, 2009, and those that would have been on the council at the time, the likes of myself, or on the Borough Council, myself and Declan Marie and Rosalie O'Grady, and there's a couple of others. I think Tom may have been there at the time. But at that time, it was proposed to extend that walkway from where it is now at the entrance into Garter Point, right around the foreshore, right around through Mud Lane and out. The problem that we had that time was the residents within the areas that backed onto that, and I was glad that Tom McSharry actually touched on that. There was the back of their property, left their property wide open. And I do remember at that time there was sewerage works that took place between number 141 to 195 Cartron Point, and them houses back down to the shoreline, and it was opened up into a pathway. And because it caused so much controversy at the time, and even through the Residents Association and everything else, all of that was allowed to grow in. Nobody ever made any attempt, even from the Residents Association, who keeps the estate immaculate. They just let it grow in because of the difficulty for the people living in that area. They couldn't leave things in their back garden. I do know the number of robberies had taken place at that time when it was opened, and people's sheds was stolen from their sheds and things like that. And I do know that there would be massive controversy if they decided to extend it around. I have no problem supporting the motion is that they extend it as far as Ferndale along that shore, but any further than that, and I do know myself, there will be a backlash from the residents, we'd say, within Cartron Bay, from back from 64 to 47, who back out onto that, and the residents in on River Road from 41 back to 95. Because I've been talking to a number of them there during the week, because I hadn't understood the full content of the motion, and I just want to be prepared. And they says that no problem with any works that was being done once it didn't open up the back of their properties. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady.
And exactly what Councillor Gibbons has said there, it was an issue that was aired on several occasions at the Borough Council in the day, and there was an issue, as he has clearly outlined, an issue of residents having a problem about their security. But I think to engage with the residents, and I'm all for engagement with residents, but I don't think we own the land to engage with anybody, or maybe I'm not clear on that. But it would complement greatly the work that has been done on that road, because it's every day you go on it now. It's phenomenal, the progress that has been made and the fabulous work that's been done on it. So it would complement it, but I'm not so sure that we own the land. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Councillor Bray.
Be brief. I wish to support the motion. Now, I have to say, like Councillor McSharry, that the report that we've received doesn't give a lot of room for optimism. But having said that, I think it's realistic too, because Councillor O'Grady has just pointed out one of the difficulties in terms of ownership, special area of conservation and so on. But I think it's worthwhile following up, and hopefully we can see some type of resolution. Probably not in the immediate future, but in the near future. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Mr. Kilfeather.
Cathaoirleach, I was just going to say, I think the report is sets out there are challenges in relation to this project, and it is a long-term one. I'd just like to make the point, we already have a separate request in relation to the development of facilities in Cartron at another site, where I know Mr. Gavin had clarified something in relation to title. You know, there's only so much we can do deal with at a time. We already have a request to engage with groups out there in relation to that, but certainly this is one that we can take note of. The report is exactly as was given to a previous notice of motion on this from Councillor Gibbons some months ago. So look, it is what it is. It's just not quite straightforward. We do not own all of the ground, so, and it is, as Councillor Bree said, special area conservation. So, you know, sometimes things, while we might all like to move them along, they're just not that straightforward. And as I said, we do have another request in relation to Cartron. So, you know, we can't prioritise everything, but look, we'll take note of this. Thank you, Carla.
Lovely. Thank you, members. We'll move on to item number 2, deferred.
I'll second that.
No, item number 2 is deferred, sorry, Art. Item number 3, councillor Healy.
Seconded.
Second, councillor Mullaney.
What I'm looking for here, I'm looking for an extension onto the community employment schemes. Participants that of these community involvement schemes, we know the great work they do. They're tied in with Meals on Wheels, caretakers of community centres and everything else. And what has happened this year is some of these schemes last for a year or last for 3 years. And what's happening here, as we know, this scheme, people haven't got the full use of it at all. And talking to young people that are on these schemes, it's a great outlet for them. It's a way of them getting tied in with their communities. It's also a way of them getting themselves ready to go back and look for a job and put a bit of confidence into them. So I'm hoping that the Minister will take on board the need for the extension of this and the importance as well of these community involvement schemes and what they do in areas and how they affect areas. And I suppose hopefully when we come out of this lockdown, that's when we'll need more of these people on the ground to help out in their communities and that. So it's an important aspect. As well as that, if you look at TUS and any of these other organisations that in there, they only get these people employed for a year or more. They need to extend that out so that they can tie in with community groups and as well as that on longer term projects and different things. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mullaney.
Yeah, Cahir, look, I'd like to compliment Councillor Healy on this motion. I think it's very timely, and what he has said is exactly right. A lot of those schemes are 12-month schemes, particularly the TUS scheme. There's a lead in of a month or 6 weeks. And this year in particular, there was the close down for April, May and June. And we're back in the first part of this year with January and February and maybe into March, looking as if it'll be closed down. At the best of times, I think there should be no such thing as a one-year scheme because of the familiarisation that's needed for the participant and the fact that it takes so long just to get going that there should be a minimum of 24 months. So I'm delighted to be able to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Casserly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to support that motion as well. I had a similar motion down a few months ago, or not that long ago, just on that and the importance of TUS workers in the communities and also to have the time period extended because as Jerry said there, by the time they get trained up and get used to the different projects and the community groups get used to having help, it's nearly time for them to go again. And also another issue that we find with TUS workers is that I think there should be more of an overlap when one TUS worker is finishing the time period that there should be the new TUS workers should be just to start a little bit earlier so that there's an overlap so that they can be shown the ropes and shown what to do so that they're not left to be trained then for another 5 or 6 weeks so that there's a seamless crossover from one to the other. And I just want to pay tribute to the TUS workers and to Leader and all the other employment scheme operators because what they add to the village and to voluntary groups and communities is invaluable. And also the TUS workers and those community workers, they give so much and they get a lot back as well. So it's a fantastic scheme, but I'd like to support the motion. But just to say that again, that I think that it should be looked at in more detail, that at least 2 years of a time scale, if not more, because what they're only earning for the TUS schemes is only €20 extra a week anyway. So it's not like they're costing a huge amount, and they're saving, they're saving the communities and they're saving government departments a huge amount of money as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
I'd just like to support the motion. Councillor Castleway said it doesn't take a lot more money to keep the schemes going, and in a lot of cases the people that's out on them, it suits them because a full-time job mightn't be available to them, so common sense seems to go out the door on these and the value to the communities as well. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Just to support the motion as well, Cahirlock, and just to say that the schemes are working very, very well throughout all the communities, and I believe there is availability for places at the moment if you qualify for the scheme as well. And I do also believe that, you know, a year is not long enough. The RSS is much longer, but you have to have a herd number to qualify for that. But certainly, if the two schemes were a few years longer, I think it would be more beneficial to the people that are doing the schemes, and also more beneficial to the villages and communities that they're working in.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'd also like to be associated with the sentiments as been said. We all see it firsthand, the great work that these TUS workers do, and I think has been said, for a small amount of money a week extra, it's invaluable to all the community, so I lend my support to it as well. Moving on to the next item, item 4, Councillor Healy. Seconded by Councillor Gilroy, was it? Thank you. Councillor Healy.
All right. This road is the Bundoran Forest Walk down in Gosharawi. This is an ongoing issue. I was hoping to have photographs of it to show you firsthand what the residents down there are living with at the present. There's an narrow road going up to it. The cars are parking everywhere around it. The water now is flowing down the road. One section of the road had been done, and what's needed here is the council need to step up to the mark and help out in some way. Now, I did raise this at a meeting before, and afterwards I did contact the Minister Humphreys regarding it, and she says that we could apply for an outdoor grant, but unfortunately we don't come under that scheme, and I has been in contact with the council officials as well in relation to it, and they've says that the only scheme that's available to us is a community involvement scheme. Now, the way I look at it, I don't think the people down there should be given a form to fill in to ask them to get the road done up. This is a benefit to Sligo, it's a benefit to us, and it's a benefit to all the people that's coming to use that walk. I was talking to Quilcha. Quilcha were in the process of putting in a new car park, working in conjunction with Sligo County Council. But Quilcha says that they would not be intending going ahead with that project unless the road is done first. And I welcome that. At the end of the day, it's not a lot. The photographs would show a lot more of what I'm talking about and what it means. I went down there on numerous occasions, met camper vans going up it. There's no place to turn around. And as well as that, when the cars are parked there, they're blocking access of farmers trying to get up the mountain, gates blocked, parking in front of their houses. So I'm asking Sligo County Council to have another look at this again, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, I'd like to support the motion. That particular spot is very, very hard to get access up and down to it, because the road is just not fit for purpose. It's quite simply not fit for purpose. There's people parking, obstructing gateways, obstructing entrances to houses. There is the water problem, which you're probably always going to have because it's on the side of the mountain. But the other thing too is that when you're coming down from it, you come down to a junction on a right-hand bend, and there's practically the stop sign is regularly not able to be seen. There's loose gravel there on it. It's an accident waiting to happen if we don't do something about it. So it needs to be, it certainly needs to be done. Huge amounts of tourists, as Councillor Healy has said, huge amounts of tourists. It's a success story, a huge success story, and the amount of tourists using it is massive. And for that reason, CIS would not make sense. It is a tourism route. It's an amenity route, and that's the way it needs to be treated. So that's it needs to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, if someone else, Councillor Casserly, have you indicated to speak on this? No.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be brief. I won't go back over what was said already. Just, yeah, to say that that motion has been raised, I think, at last month's municipal meeting as well, along with the resurfacing of the roads at Hazelwood. It is great that it's so successful, that those walks are they're so well known now throughout the county, and they're very well advertised through Sligo Walks websites, and they're very, very popular. But and the work that Quilcha has been doing there, there has been damage to the road, but Quilcha have said that they would help with resurfacing that as well, because it's so narrow on this private land on either side. I'm not sure how much more the road can be widened, but certainly it would make a massive difference if the car park there was extended. And I know the second half, the bottom part of that road has been resurfaced recently, and there's been a lot of drainage done there. So I'd like to acknowledge that work that's been done from the roads department there. And just to say, well, hopefully that when the rest of the work is done, that will improve that, and the car park will be made bigger as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culfeather.
Okay, look, I suppose no one disputes that the road needs to be upgraded, and the difficulty is identifying a discrete source of funding. We haven't been able to do that. It may be hard decisions may have to be made in terms of the roadworks programme. If members want to prioritise it, we certainly cannot identify an option to get funding for this scheme, and I suppose that's why the CIS was flagged as a potential source of funding. It's just difficult. It does need work. I think everyone agrees on that, but it has to be paid for from somewhere. I suppose that's the challenge. Thank you,
Councillor Healy.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for your response. First of all, just to clear up a few matters. It was mentioned at the municipal meeting, but that was in relation to the 20,000 euro that was going to be spent in that area. Also, the farmers, I have talked to the farmers down there. They are willing to work with us and help us in any way they can. There says the line of communication is there if anything wants to be done. And I think now we might have an opportunity as well to write back to the Minister and tell her that we cannot find funding for projects like this, and maybe that we should be looking at it. And I'm sure if Sligo County Council probably not the only one that has the same problem, and maybe if we get in touch with another few different council chambers around the country, we might know exactly what we could and we couldn't get. So I think that we should write back to the Minister and tell her, because we have already been in contact with her in relation to this road, and inform her, which means that there's certain schemes here that we can't get funding for, and this is one of them, and maybe she might be able to enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Yes, I wonder for next week's meeting on the roads, I wonder would it be possible to have a costing on what might be involved for that? Because I don't think we've got a figure as to what it might be, so that at least we could consider it if we knew what the figure would be. Thank you.
Cathaoirleach, in response to Councillor Gilroy, we'll arrange for a rough costing for the works to be prepared. I think we had one before, actually. I think it's a fairly significant sum, but just to note, and we'll be dealing with it under any other business. The roadworks meetings won't be going ahead next week because we haven't got allocations. Cathaoirleach will deal with it under any other business.
Just before we finish, just to give the members a look at exactly what it entails. There's the regional car park there.
Yeah.
There's a gate there that has access into farmers' lands. As you can see, they're all blocked up. That's number one. I think there's a... That's the top road one up to the...
We're going to well, I think we had a problem just getting them up when Councillor Healy was speaking. So can we bring them forward to the roads meeting, Councillor Healy?
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, right, members. Moving on to the next item there. Motion number 5, Councillor Healy again.
Yeah, I just want you to have a look at this photograph.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Seconder for motion, Councillor Bray.
Yeah, I'll second it.
I got a response back from the council in regard to this. This is a house in Collooney. Everyone probably go by it. It's just as you down from Quigley's as you cross over, it's on the bad turn. That woman is an 85-year-old woman that lives in that house. That house is constantly being flooded. It was raised with the council on many occasions, and the response I got back from the council. That woman was out at 4:20 one morning trying to clean out the grates along that road. As you see, there's one grate there. There's a number of issues that the council can address, and one of them is that they could see about putting in a number of more grates, because as that road goes on there, you have another hill the other side where there's no gullies on it at all, and the water flows down that and all verges down on that woman's house. From the centre of that road to that woman's house is 2 foot. of a canter heading into that woman's house. Now, that's a problem. We need a solution. And we need the council to step up to the mayor, because you can't solve that. And across the road where that picture was taken, the council own a pile of own land there where there's trees growing, which is causing leaves to fall. I'm asking the council now to cut them trees down, because there are two things they'll do. First of all, they might sort out that woman's problem, but also it'll give a clearance of the line that you can see the road as well. So this is an issue, as it says, that woman has them outside of her house 24/7. She's after paying $2,500 to get them flood defences put in. She's afraid to take them down because of the amount of times the water came into her house. The place beside it was a shop where she used to have, she used to be a flower shop years ago. So, as I says, the council's aware, but I want to thank as well the outdoor staff that have come and helped her on many occasions and have put sandbags outside her house. But that woman is 85 years of age, looking after her husband in that house. Surely now we can do something better than that. So I'm asking the council to relook at the responses sent out to me and see can we get something done with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bree, I think you said.
Just 40 seconds.
Yeah. Councillor Walsh, did you hand up?
I just want to support the motion also, and it'd be important there's an assessment carried out as soon as possible in relation to this. There is another house flooding actually down below where there's a large amount of water holding also in heavy rainfall. So I support the motion also.
Thank you. Is there anyone else looking to come in on that? Councillor Casserly, you have your hand up. Do you wish to speak on it? No, that's grand.
So just to support the motion, thank you.
Right. Thank you. That's grand. Just if anyone, when they finish speaking, if you can turn off that. Thank you. That's grand. That one is item number 5. Item number 6, Councillor Malani, seconded by Councillor Baker.
Yeah, Cahir, look, I note the response. I'm glad this correspondence going to the TII and Bus Éireann. I just put down this motion out of concern that as Castlebalden now is being bypassed by the N4, that I can see no plans at the moment for a stop for a bus there. Now, Ballinafad has already lost its bus stop. It's 2.5 miles up the road. And my concern is that the same might happen to Castlebalden, and Castlebalden people might find themselves travelling down to Drumfin or wherever to access a bus. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Support the motion, and as Councillor Malani said, the big fear in these times that it could be just taken away, and it has been very well used because you have a lot of areas meets at that centre. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor supports the motion, and I support the motion myself.
I'd like to support the motion, and I'd also like to bring it to the attention of Councillor Malani that in 2009 TII was rota in relation to a bus stop for that area, so that it is listed to be done, and that was in 2009. If you want to just take that up with them again.
For Ballinafad or
for Castlebalden?
Well, the bus was stopping in Castlebalden, and is all the time stopping.
No, for a bus shelter.
For a bus shelter, okay.
Thank you. Motion number 7, Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Clark. Councillor Gilroy.
Yes, thank you for what I can only describe as an excellent report and an excellent response that I got. It's good to see that the veterinary office and the dog warden service are keeping a close eye and a watch on the dog breeding establishments. It appears that there's only one left in County Sligo now, and that it's been very well run, and that it's getting several unannounced inspections, because that's the only way. We've had a lot of media in the last week about badly kept ones that had to be closed down all over the country, and several things that have happened. So well done on an excellent report, and I'm delighted to see that has happened, and that unannounced inspections have been taking place. Can I just add that I had interaction with the dog warden service and with Mr. Calleary over the last few days, and I want to commend them on the excellent service that they provided. We've had a number of sheep kills in the region, especially in North Sligo in the last week, And I think the message has to go out from this council meeting that this is unacceptable, that dogs have to be kept on leads at all times, that after 10 a.m. dogs at beaches must be on a lead at all times, that people have to, that the farmland in the vicinity of the different beaches around the county are privately owned, that there's farmers living there, and just because sheep aren't killed, if a dog chases sheep, the chances are that the ewe is going to miscarry. And it's all about keeping dogs under control. It doesn't matter how small or how big they are. I have small dogs myself, and you could say they do no harm to anyone and things like that. All dogs need to be kept under control at all times, but especially at the moment. But again, thank you for the excellent service, both by Anthony, Patsy and Connell, for the wonderful service that they've provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Chairman, thanks. I'd like to commend Councillor Gilroy, and his motion is very timely. And about 9 years ago since I put down a similar motion, and I've been advocating for a holistic view on dog control over the last number of years. And I'd like to commend Councillor Gilroy on his excellent interview this morning on Ocean FM, and John Lynch, who interviewed him, who asked all the pertinent questions. And it's the first time that I've seen a media outlet understanding the issue and prepared to highlight it. I've been on Ocean FM with Niall Delaney, and there have been misleading headlines put on the Weekender that misrepresented me on a number of times in relation to what needs to be done in relation to control of dogs and the control of those people who go out to rural areas, blooding hounds and damaging livestock and killing animals, a blood sport that needs to be stopped. We had, of course, an interview on Ocean FM by Father Tobin, who wants to see people jailed who steal pet dogs. So, like, you know, the people that owns those dogs, these dogs that causes all the damage to sheep at the farming areas, if you steal one of them dogs, you get jailed. But the owner of those dogs that are allowed and encourage the animals to enter farmland and attack farm animals and do it when they're in control or not in control of them, there's no penalty or no subsequent fine for them. And judges' hands are tied because the fine that they can allocate to a dog that causes damage is tied to the license fee. So I have been advocating for some time that people who have one or two dogs should be at a nominal fee, good dog owners, but people that have 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 dogs, that needs to be increased in the license fee for those, so that the judge can pass sentence on those owners as a penalty. I mean, we had a case in Galway where a woman had 27 dogs tied in cars and vans around the house, and the judge was tied to a fine of €25 per dog. That's all he could do, and in that case. So look, it's time, and I'm delighted that John Lynch gave you such a fair interview, Councillor Gilroy, but I hope that the rest of the media wakes up to this and the damage that's caused to farm animals year in, year out. I myself have been the victim of this. One year, about 11 years ago, we had 45 sheep killed on the one night by a number of dogs, which was a huge financial hit. And I commend again Councillor Gilroy for this motion.
Councillor Casterly has indicated to speak.
Yeah, just very briefly, I also been contacted about this, and I'd like to welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
You can clarify me if I'm wrong, but I think if sheep has been worried they're in danger, I think the landowner can shoot the dog, and I think a lot of owners doesn't realise that. Again, so.
Yeah, Councillor O'Boyle, you've indicated.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just to show my support to the motion, and I'd like to congratulate Councillor Gilroy on bringing it forward. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you, members. We'll move on so to Next, Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Haley. Item number 8.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for the nice comments on that. And Councillor Clark, I also had Joe Duffy on Friday, so my reach has stretched even further. The next one was about the illegal dumping, and sorry now because I'm looking at the agenda on the screen. So thanks again for that, but it's an ongoing problem where in some rural areas people are coming out and fly tipping on private property, and unfortunately, due to national legislation, the onus lies with the landowner, and I see from the reply that it's not within our powers to change that. So maybe we all need to start lobbying at national level. It is disgraceful what's going on. I was called down again yesterday to Cliffany to another incident of dumping. They seem to be ongoing, and sometimes our resources get tied up trying to identify the landowner because they are ultimately responsible. And in some of these cases, the land hasn't been registered, and it has caused problems where we haven't been able to get it sorted. So I really would ask that anything that can be done extra, or if the Environment Department want to advise the councillors as to maybe what we could do to lobby at national level to give more power to the waste enforcement officers to deal with this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haley.
Yeah, I just want to support the motion, and Councillor Gilroy is right in what he's saying. We had a number of areas that the dumping now. Usually it's into Quilcha land or forestry land. Sligo County Council came across a pile of tyres there a number of years ago. Myself, I came across a dumping area up there in Colani where it was brought up and tipped up. And like that, when we contacted the council came back and says it's up to the landowner to clean it up. And what happens here is there's a financial burden on the person that where all this stuff is dumped. And I mean, 90% of the time where they dump this stuff into people's grounds, they haven't got the money either to clean it up. So we're running into a double fiasco. So as I says, if there is a situation here, I think we should be bringing it to the Minister's attention and get this changed, the bylaws changed, that it can work in our favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Merton Connolly, I think you indicated on this, did you, Merton?
Yes, Cahir, look, I would like to support the motion as well. I think it's very unfair that some people, and some of them very elderly, have got notices of enforcement, and they weren't even aware that there was dumping done on their land. Now, some of this is historic dumping, and it nearly is impossible for them to clean up. You would need specialised equipment really for it. So I support the motion, and I think it's very unfair that some of these people get enforcement notices. Thanks, Cahir.
Thank you. Councillor O'Boyle, have you indicated to speak on this? No? Councillor Baker?
Yeah, just to support the motion, and I think the other thing that's a major problem all over the county at the moment is just general tipping out of cars. And I just seen in a short stretch of road in my own village, there was over 3 bags collected the weekend. And I think maybe whether there could be, I know with the climate that's in it now, doing the usual spring clean we have, but maybe if that was resolved as soon as we could, because there's lots of volunteers there, and it's not a thing that everyone be out together to be just to it. Yeah, but that's all I want to say, because what happens when you see a bit of tipping along the road, what happens, a lot more will come and be chopped on it. So quicker it's cleaned up, the better.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Just to support the motion as well, Ciarán, and to say, you know, I suppose to thank the Waste Enforcement Department for the work that they're doing as well in Sligo County Council. I had a number of issues only in the past week, and they were promptly and swiftly dealt with. But you know, I would appeal to people to cop on, to be honest with you. You know, in an area where a lot of people walk on a rural road just before Christmas, just the week leading up to Christmas, there was a full tanker of septic tank effluent. That's human waste let off down into a drain, you know. So I mean, and they didn't come from too far to do that with a tanker and probably a tractor. So I would just appeal that people have some cop on, and anyone that sees these people at this offence are doing this offence, they should be reporting them. That's what should happen. They should be reporting them, and they wouldn't be doing it again, because it is absolutely playing havoc with the countryside we have at a time where everyone is exercising and out on all our rural roads. Just support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, just to finish off, it has been also brought to my attention by the environment section and the waste enforcement that if anybody sees any truck or anything like that carrying waste, if they're an unlicensed waste operator, they can be prosecuted. So if you get the number of the truck and contact the council office, and maybe we'd ask our friends from the media who are present to get that message out there to the public, that if they see anyone that's commercially doing this or doing it for others, then they need to be, because some people pay these fly tippers to take the rubbish away and don't realise that it's getting dumped in scenic areas. But they are ultimately responsible. If there's evidence to link it to them, it will come back on them. But if anybody sees these fly tippers going around, or people with these trucks, to report it, and if they can give the number of the lorry, they will be chased up to see if they can justify what they were doing with it and why they were working without a license. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Gibbons. I just see you wanted to speak on this as well.
I just stated it's how would I put it? It's a situation that's going on. It's going on a long time, that this fly tipping. I even know of companies that was in this town, that reputable companies that went away and got contractors to dispose of waste for them, and it ended up they received the summons in the post, and they were able to prove that it wasn't them. They had the receipt from these companies that had done the fly tipping, and I was kind of very disappointed that the fines that they got was very small. The companies, they should have lost their license altogether. That's one aspect of it. But another aspect that was brought to my attention was there during the summer, and I know that some of the fishermen actually took care of it. Imagine that you had actually somebody that brought an oil cooker and a fridge over and dumped it on Church Island in Loughill. Now that took a boat to do that, for somebody to get the likes of that, and for that much effort to put into it, it'd have been as handy to put on a trailer and bring it down to the recycling place. It would have cost nothing. And the other aspect that I would, and it goes to this local authority as well, because I do know the number of local authority tenants have been got in the past doing a lot of illegal dumping in relation to it. And the other aspect that I would ask in relation to it, our local authority housing department should be taking more of a stance in relation to it, instead of looking at a lot of the case and saying, well, this family hasn't got the money to do this family hasn't got. Well, none of us have the money, spare money to do anything. We are responsible for getting rid of our own waste and getting rid of it right. And in relation to the fly tipping, everybody that's out there, the likes of the companies and everything else, it want to start dealing with reputable companies, not fly-by-nights. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Casserly, did you indicate that your hand is up?
Yeah, thank you. I'll just be brief. I won't repeat everything that was said, but I just want to pay credit to the waste enforcement staff and the outdoor staff who do try their best. And under, I suppose, you know, that they wouldn't have a huge amount of money for these cleanups. I know that they were granted money last year, but that money needs to be granted every year for those type of cleanups. And also to say that there are so many amnesties now in relation to mattress collections, and as Councillor Gibbons said, in relation to, you know, the likes of fridges and white goods that can be recycled for free and dropped off at these different centres. So there is no reason. It's as easy to bring it into a centre as it is to drive out into the middle of nowhere to dump. So, you know, and there's so many like glass bottles and everything that are found in these dump sites as well, that all this can be recycled for free. So just I suppose to make that, when it is being raised with the media, to remind people that there is so much that they can bring back to these centres and they don't have to pay for it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd also like to support the motion and agree with concur with all the sentiments that have been said. And even over the weekend, I went out to Ladies' Bray on Sunday in Kulani, and again, I've taken photographs of a lot of dumping that has taken place. And I think there is an onus maybe on the media, if we could call on the media that are here to, support all the members here to promote the facilities that we have in Sligo, and maybe, to any message they can send out to people to alert them that, it's our own countryside, that the people are dumping in on. And I think has been said, I experienced last year one farmer who would normally had a whatever 3-foot high sheep wire, he had to actually put 2 rows of that high because of rubbish that was being thrown over. Where a normal row would be 3 foot high, he had to get 7-foot posts and put it 6 foot high because bottles and everything was being thrown over. And again, as Councillor Healy said, he had to come out and he had to foot the bill to clean that up himself because it was on his property. And that's very hard on the farmer community and people that own land out in the rural areas that are, they're doing their best and keeping their area so clean, and to see people that are so, it's very bad form. And I think people need to just, as been said there, to a bit more respect, I think, from the people that are doing this, and hopefully that we can curtail it, because at the end of the day we're trying to sell Sligo as a clean and a tidy place to visit, and this doesn't help anybody. It affects us all. So thank you. Motion number 9, Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Haley.
Sorry, thanks for the report again. It's another ongoing issue, and it's down to maintenance of drainage, and both by the local authority and by the landowners. I have 3 cases recently that I've been working on in Maharao area where roads have been damaged because of flooding. Part of it is to do with drainage on land and water getting out. If water lies on a road for a week or 2 weeks, it's going to damage the road, and really we have to try and keep on top of that. We'll never have the resources of the past where people were able to cut back drains and all the rest, but we do need to keep an eye on it anywhere that it's likely to affect the road surface, and to please ask that we try and get on top of these things in a timely manner, because if it's done quickly, then the damage to the road and the damage to the road users' cars will be reduced, and the cost to the council will actually be less in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haley.
Just want to support the motion. I mean, we see it around every area that we're in here in Sligo, water coming out onto the roads and the damage it can do. 90% of the time, it's only a matter of tying in with the farmer and seeing how we can address it. And I think that's what we should do. We should be looking into areas and how we can address taking water off the roads. If we can keep them off the roads, the tarmac will last a lot longer as well on the roads. Most of these roads now we're talking about are first and second class roads where no funding has been spent on them over a number of years. I think the last time any big funding was spent on rural roads was back in 2006. So, as I says, we need funding to address the roads, but we also need funding to address the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion agreed. Motion number 10, Councillor Gibbons, second by Councillor Bray. Councillor Gibbons.
The National Agency of Domestic Violence, working with 39 frontline services across the country, presented a new report last year called Tracking the Shadow Pandemic, outlining the prevalence of abuse and co-received control over the last 6 months of living with the COVID-19 from March to August 2020. The report showed that in total 2,000 women and over 400 children received support from domestic violence services every month during that period. It's also shown that a total of 3,450 women and 589 children who had never, as far as known, contacted domestic violence services before looked for support and safety from March to August. A staggering 33,941 helpline calls were answered across the country over the period, and an average of 184 calls every day. In addition, services had to adopt and reconfigure almost overnight. to provide a virtual service for women in lockdown. Across the country, services held 33,624 phone support sessions, 575 video support sessions, in addition to 8,143 in-person support sessions. Helplines, emails, texts, online chat, messages became more important than ever before. Services received 2,260 helpline emails, 3,452 texts, 1,047 online chat messages. Since the start of COVID-19, the government has prioritised domestic violence, and this has to be welcomed. But calling something a priority means that it also has to be name-checked in the national budget and funded and resourced as a priority. Almost overnight, support groups had to completely change the way that they work to ensure that women and children trapped in abusive homes could find safety and professional support. And frontline services had to pull out all the stops to respond to the increasing and complex needs for women and children since March last year. But this huge effort is coming on top of decades of coping with inadequate national support and historic underfunding. Services like these are now at breaking point. The system is broken, the infrastructure is antiquated, and the money is not clear, and the promise is running dry. Safe Ireland recommended that 7.5 million was needed for services in budget 2021 to ensure that they can meet the current and growing demands that they are facing. The report shows that the demands on services have increased monthly, month by month, since March, and that the third lockdown has increased demand even more. It is also called on the National Service Development Plan to be developed by Safe Ireland in collaboration with services on the ground and local services here in Sligo. To date, there has been no clarity from government on additional funding or on how the ongoing transform the out-of-date infrastructure. Thank you very much. I'd ask you all to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Safe Ireland, the umbrella group for domestic violence support groups, has pointed out that while the government continuously name-check domestic violence as a priority, this hasn't been backed up by the resources that's required. The number of new victims who have come forward during the lockdown, which has been highlighted by Councillor Gibbons, is indicative of the depth of hidden abuse and trauma in this country. Women's Aid said they have been in contact with women who have been attacked with weapons and fists, who are being verbally abused, controlled and monitored at all times by abusive partners. So in this context, Cathaoirleach, I think it's clear that adequate funding and resources for services for victims of domestic violence must be allocated by government so as to ensure the services can meet a current and indeed, unfortunately, a growing demand. I formally second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Casserly.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to disagree with some of the wording of the motion more than anything else, because according to the recent JPC report received by Sligo JPC, and there's actually a Sinn Féin councillor on that, funding has been allocated. Gardaí have been prioritising all calls and are even going back over records and calling people. There are emergency court sittings, legal aid and advice is available. New laws concerning the Domestic Violence Act 2018 is being implemented and enforced. New divisional protective services units are working around the county. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'd hate for the women of Sligo, or for the message going out from this council that there's no help or that nothing is happening. My message is to the vulnerable women of Sligo is not to feel trapped. And I'm telling women to speak up and speak out, and that help is at hand. Gardaí, of course, they need resources, but help is there. So it's not, the motion is saying that there's no help there. The support is there. There's a place in a full-time unit specifically for domestic violence in Sligo. Every domestic violence victim received a second call back within 7 days. An interagency victims resource pack was launched by Gardaí in 2019 in conjunction with 9 other victims agencies. There is a mandatory arrest policy for breach of orders and special court support sittings. This was a priority well before COVID, but Operation Fuishiv, launched during early COVID as is recognised, increased during the pandemic. So I just want to pay tribute to all those involved, to Sligo Gardaí for their dedicated work on these sensitive cases. And I know I'm familiar with some of those cases that they're worked on. So my message from the council to the women of Sligo is to speak up and to speak out. And I advocate for a zero tolerance to the scourge of domestic violence. And the Domestic Violence Advocacy Service and other support groups are doing great work, and I know that they would want that work to be recognised as well. And just to thank everybody who is involved with this, because it's a very, very difficult topic, but just to say that there is help out there and support is there. Thank you. So I don't want to be associated with that motion the way it's worded. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Healy.
I want to support the motion, and also due to the pandemic, that's why the numbers have increased. And as it says, the quicker we get out of this pandemic, the better. But they do need further funding towards the help and support that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, so to okay.
Wait. I can come back. Onto this.
Here, look, just to have it said that Safe Ireland is the umbrella group for domestic violence support groups throughout the 26 counties. And that organisation that represents the support groups has come out clearly and said that the government has continuously name-checked domestic violence as a priority, and they have said that this has not been backed up by the resources that is required. Those voluntary groups are not receiving the funding and resources. Now, Councillor Casserly can support the government and pay tribute to the government, but the government is failing women in Ireland. It is failing the victims of domestic abuse in Ireland. And I don't think we need that message to go out that we're happy or satisfied with the level of resources provided by the government. It's shocking what's happening in this country, and I'm surprised to see people supporting the government and their lack of efforts in this regard.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbons.
Councillor Casserly can put whatever picture she wants or paint whatever picture. I'd advise her to go back and read the motion again, because the work that is being done by the on-the-ground support services is unbelievable what they have to deal with. And it's them services that I have been talking to in relation to this whole aspect and the inadequate funding that is there. And anybody to think that since March of last year that the most important points that will bring which has shown an increase in domestic violence is poverty, which has brought around an awful lot of that, where people just depend on the ordinary COVID payment. The fact that people are in the one house since last March together, that they don't get a break. If there is any chance of domestic violence, that's exactly where it's happening. And these organisations has recognised that, and they're pushed to the last. All the stops have been pulled out. They're doing their utmost best. But if they cannot get the adequate funding for it, the system is going to collapse around them. There's no sense in saying that the same budget is adequate for 2018 as it was for 2020. It is not. It is a different ball game altogether. There is mental health issues. There's everything brought around by this whole COVID pandemic that we have here at the moment. And the services for the government to turn around and say, we support the different agencies that's there for the women, and then that they won't put the money into it. It's beyond belief. And to try and turn it whatever way you want, Councillor Casserly, reality is coming out from this meeting. I have talked to a number of them organisations, as I'm sure the Councillor Bree did. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Casserly.
My issue is with the wording. It sounds like from the wording that there is no support there for victims of domestic. That's my issue. That there's no support there for victims of domestic violence in Sligo. And there is a new unit set up, and there is interagency support there. What I think from the wording of the motion is that people who are victims feel that there is no support there. That's my issue, is that the support is there for any woman who is a victim of domestic violence. That's my point, and that's the message that I want to get out there from the council, that for people not to be afraid to speak up, because the support is there.
Yeah,
Councillor. That somebody, and especially a female out there that's representing a huge constituency of women, would needle pick at a motion that is looking for more support, more funding to be put into the support services, and I am very disappointed.
Yeah, well, look, in fairness, Councillor Gibbons. My reading on this motion has been that Councillor Gibbons has stated that the priority has not yet been backed up. So in fairness, I think that, Councillor Gibbons is saying there are certain resources, but they're not enough. And I think, in fairness to Councillor Gibbons, that's my reading of it. I don't know whether any of the others. So I think that, the message has to go out that there are resources there, but, there can never be enough resources because, as we're all well aware, people that are confined for the last 6, 8, 9 months, the services that were in place are going to be quadruply stretched in a time of people being in confined spaces. And I think rather than going on with this, I think that's my understanding of what Councillor Gibbon is saying, that whatever resources we have, that we need more. And the more resources that go into any of those services, I think there can never be enough, because I think we're all in agreement on that whatever services are there, they need extra funding. But also on that, the message go out through the media that services are available, and for people that need the services to certainly use them. So if that's agreed.
Look. Them services that you are talking about, and you're 100% right, the likes of Garda, Chicone, and whatever else, they are stretched to their last. This needs funding to be put into it. This needs the likes of them support services to get extra staff in if they need to deal with the cases that's out there. That's exactly what's needed.
Right. Thanks. That motion is agreed. We move on to motion number 11. Councillor Gibbons again, seconded by Councillor Healy.
Go here, look. Sorry, would you 1 second now? The mortgage to rent scheme, right, is the government initiative that was set up by the government in 2012.
Councillor Gibbons, number 11 calls on the coalition government to extend the fuel allowance.
My apologies. Go here, like, I put this motion forward because I do realise in relation to there is a lot of hardship on families that's out there. And even there is families that is out there, the low earners, those that's out on the COVID payment and things like that. Now, I do know that my own party is down in relation to anybody in receipt of a COVID payment should be entitled to the fuel allowance. But what I am asking for is the families that is hard hit out there with young children and who is doing home education with those kids, that the fuel allowance is increased to €42 per week and that an extra month is provided on top of it. Because even as it is at the moment, it's a lot of families that's out there, they have to have the heating on to provide that comfort for their children. This is a cost that they didn't have when their children was attending school. This is a cost that with kids at home, the heating has to be kept on the whole time. I do know for a fact, and I've witnessed it even with my own children, I've seen where the central heating system broke down within the national schools or the secondary schools, and the kids were sent home because there wasn't adequate heat. Now we're in a situation where families is out there and they're trying to balance the few pound that they have. Do we spend it on heat or do we spend it on food? The reality to it, the kids is the ones that's suffering in relation to this. And because of the COVID end of it, it's not just on the ordinary family with children. It's also there with people that's unemployed and that's living at home and that's on their own and they're expected to be locked down. But inadequate heat, especially with our inclement weather, we need to be able to fund it. And I am asking that the government would increase the weekly allowance of the rent allowance from 28 to 42 euros per week, and that an extra month would be added at the end of it. Thanks very much. I'd ask you all to support that motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I just want to support the motion, and also just last week over 475,000 people went on to the state register as for the PPP payment. So that's a lot of people, and unfortunately they can't receive any fuel allowance or anything like that because you have to be unemployed for at least 15 months. So we need to look at this serious because there is a lot of people out there that's struggling either to put food on the table or to heat their homes. So I think that we seriously need to write to the Minister and make sure that we highlight this fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Grady.
I think Councillor Gibbons' motion is a very timely motion. we all know that if you sit in a house all day and there's no any form of heat in it, that can be very uncomfortable. And certainly families that are homeschooling, and indeed parents who are working at home. And it's not maybe always those who have come from the lowest income that would be deprived of being able to turn on heat or have firewood or whatever. I was out walking about 3 weeks ago, and I met a family who we would consider very well off gathering firewood for home. So it's not always who we can see is in need, but I do think it's something that the government should address, and I think it's a very timely motion that there would be a consideration put in place. I know there's tax relief for people who are working from home, but they too need heat working from home. But children above all, heat is as important nearly as food to them. So I fully and heartily support Councillor Gibbons' motion.
Thank you. Motion agreed. Moving on, Councillor Gibbons again, motion number 12. Councillor Haley, second.
Look, I decided to bring this now. I'd like to thank the executive for the report in relation to it. And in fairness, I have to say this is a scheme that was brought in 2012. And a visiting report that I received myself in relation to it. It's a national report in relation to it. It makes it look like Sligo County Council hasn't actually taken this serious now. The likes of this scheme, I don't personally agree with it, the same as I don't personally agree with HAP or the RAS scheme, but it's what is in place, and I feel myself that it's kind of, we have to make do with what we have. But I think myself now, I'm not being criticising in relation to this, I'm just asking the question in relation to it. I have the figures there, and it shows that since the scheme started in 2012, well, I only the figures from 2015, it shows that Sligo County Council didn't act on this until the third quarter of 2020. And I actually have the report here. It's in it. We felt on that. Sorry, but 1 second now. We had absolutely no confidence, or we didn't put it into place for anybody until the third quarter, and we got 2, and then in the fourth quarter was 5 people was accepted. Now the one thing, and I would say, looking at the rest of the chart that I have there was over 1,000 people that availed of that was accepted onto it for 2020, and in 2019 there was 700. But for Sligo County Council, my figures that shows for it that there was 5 people was all that was accepted to it. But I would like to know kind of why it's shown here that from 2015 up until the quarter or the third quarter of last year that there was absolutely nobody actually was granted this. Maybe somebody could come back to me in relation to it. Thanks very much.
Councillor Haley. Oh yes, much more. Mr. Moran, do you want to speak on that, or?
Yeah, I think Joe Murphy is on the line. I think Joe might speak in relation to that motion.
Can you hear me, members?
Yes, Joe.
Yes, Joe.
Councillor Gibbons, you're referring to a report there. I don't have sight of that report.
Well, this is a national report. It's come down from government. And in relation to it, it shows, I can actually forward a copy of it on to all the members. And if it is a thing that you want to place it on the agenda for the next meeting, I can forward it on to you. And what we just see now, where we come from with it, it's the quarterly report by local authorities complete Q2 or Q4 2020. On that, it actually shows that Sligo and Roscommon were the 2 worst performing in relation to it. And Roscommon actually came on board a lot sooner than Sligo did. Sligo only came on board in relation to this whole thing that allocated. A lot of the applicants that were passed for it wasn't until the third quarter of 2020.
Okay, well, Councillor, I don't know from that report whether you're stating that we have had applications in since 2015. I don't know what dates the applications have come in from.
Yeah, well,
so it's very hard to say whether we were successful or not. The difficulty with that scheme, it's a very complex scheme. It's a new scheme. There's about 9 different players in that scheme, between the applicant, between the initial lender, between the mortgage company that have taken it over. You have the council, you have the department, you have the housing agency. There's at least 9 parties involved in this process, so it is a very slow process.
Right, but all I'm looking at,
I don't have all the facts that you have there.
Right,
and I can't say some of these are going back to 2015 because I'm not sure whether they are or not. But it does take, I admit, it does take a considerable amount of time because the scheme isn't simple. And the bottom line for us as a local authority, when we're agreeing to enter an agreement with one of these bodies, is that the people involved become tenants of ours. And our primary responsibility has to be to the tenant, because they're ending up as our tenant. And we have to ensure that the house, which we end up being the landlord is suitable to their needs. And that's where the difficulties can arise. And I'm not saying they arise in this case because I don't really know, I don't have the data you have there in relation to this. And it probably would have been helpful maybe in formulating a response that I did have. My response dealt clearly with what you asked. You asked for a number of information in relation to the applications. Many were complete, and many were refused, and many enhanced, and the time frame, and that's the information I gave to you, Councillor.
Well, in fairness, Joe, and I'm just coming back to you, and I have to say that housing is complex. I know that. It's a very complex issue, don't take me wrong. And it's just a question that I'm asking. And maybe this meeting is not the right forum for this. Maybe this is something that we could maybe discuss at the SPC, and that way it'll give me time to...
Yeah. If you'll agree to that, Councillor Gibbons, we'll agree to bring that to the SPC and housing.
Because we'll tell you in relation, I'm only after receiving this information, right? My understanding is exactly what I'm saying, because normally what I would have done, I would have tied in with Joe, or I would have tied in with Mr. Morden in relation to it and gone through it. But this information only came to me this morning, because my full intentions was the report that I got out was to accept that report, and that was it. But the information that I came out, I'd bring it up, see what the story was, and then, you know, something that I have to say, like, I think we said that it's actually better to be dealt with at the SPC. It is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's complex. It's very complex, and I don't want we'd say kind of holding up this meeting with something that can actually.
Thanks, Councillor Gibbons. We'll move it on to the next SPC. Thanks, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Moran. The next motion, Councillor Tom Fox isn't with us. We'll defer that. Councillor Baker, I'll second. Number 14.
This is just to be the shortest road between Ballymote and the new N4 when it's developed. What I have asked is that it be put as the major link road, because no matter what way you go in, if you go in the Castle Baldwin way, it's a lot more turns on that. Both roads aren't great, but I think it makes sense that should be the one that should be used, because otherwise what's happening, they're going down to Clooney and they're coming back up Clark's Bridge, and it's not a great road either. So I don't know whether, I didn't see a report, it was only the question I was asking, so.
Yeah. Okay, here, look, I can give Councillor Baker the report. The L1502 is a local road which is narrow in places for two-way traffic, but is used as a shortcut by a lot of commercial vehicles as well as cars for getting to Ballymote from the N4 area and vice versa. The alternative route for traffic coming from Castle Baldwin, Drumfin, would be to continue into Clooney on the N4, take the N17 and then on to the R293 into Ballymote. This is a longer route, but is much more appropriate for a large volume of traffic. Major upgrades to this road will involve significant costs. However, the road will be maintained in as good a condition as possible with the grants that are available to us. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Just in a second that I support the motion. Councillor Mullaney.
Here, look, I support the motion too. I presume Councillor Baker is talking to the road in at Oliver Corley's. Yeah, no, that does definitely take an awful lot of traffic off the N4 into Ballymote, and it certainly needs an upgrade. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, okay, thanks, Councillor Taylor. I support motion number 15, Councillor Baker again, second. Councillor Taylor.
That motion was in relation to the in-house grants and to the adoption for the likes of bathrooms and essential repairs. I know with in the last number of years, might be at council level, but seemingly the department, we're not getting the funding that's desired to do it. So I know each councillor in their own area has different issues. And I think now more than ever, it's very important that we're able to keep people in their own homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
To support the motion, Caherlock as well, and you know, just I think every councillor understands the importance of these grants and the difference that it makes to these people's lives as well, you know, in keeping them at home, as Councillor Baker has said. So it's very important that we keep supporting it at every chance we get, and that we keep looking for money from the department every chance we get as well. And I know that the housing department are doing that at all times, but just that we need to keep pressure on all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Bree.
Look, I also support Councillor Baker's request to progress housing adaptation grants for applicants who are council tenants. I think every member of the council is aware of the need for the Disabled Persons Grant Scheme for tenants of council houses. However, I think it's important that we emphasise and explain to applicants that it's not the council itself which is responsible for the ongoing delay in having cases progressed. 4 years ago, the government was providing us with €628,000 for the grants. Last year, the government provided less than half that amount. So I would appeal to Councillor Baker and his Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael colleagues to use their influence to have their government restore the funding to the level it was in 2016, because the effects of the cuts has been devastating. And as far as I'm concerned, it's deplorable that the government would impose such drastic cutbacks, which hurt elderly, sick and disabled tenants. Thank you, Caherlock.
Thank you. Councillor Malani.
I just want to support the motion.
Councillor Grady wishes to
I'd like to support that motion and the importance of those grants, especially for keeping our older persons in their homes for as long as they want. And if you ask any older person where would they most like to be, they'll tell you it's in their own home, regardless of where that home is or whatever. So I certainly would support it. But I also would like to thank the staff in grants for the work that they do, and the reports that I get back from people of how they're dealt with by the people who come out to their houses to assess. And I certainly want to acknowledge the work done by Patricia Devons and staff in that area, because it's lovely to hear a feedback from, especially from older people, that they're treated with dignity and respect. And I think it's important that we continue to outline that. But I do agree with Councillor Bree, the cutting of the grants from over 600,000 down to 300,000 is crazy, and especially we're penalising people who built the nation for us, so they should be looked after, and it's the measure of any country in how they deal with their older citizens. So I fully support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, Caherlock. Yes, I'd like to support the motion, and I'd like to echo Councillor Grady's comments there about the great work that's done by Patricia and the others there in the office. They do great work in helping people. One little anomaly that has also occurred in it, I recently had somebody who qualifies for the grant and can get some of their work done, but they were advised to try to go to SEAI to get the insulation done in their attic, and under the Better Energy Home Scheme, they can only get the Better Energy Home Scheme unless 100% of the roof can be insulated with fibre. SEAI are refusing to do that. So maybe some sort of a contact could be made with SEAI to see if a solution can be found to that. We'd have a lot of houses that would have, say, a pitched roof to the front, the original house, and a flat roof extension. And because only part of it can be insulated, the Better Energy Homes attic grant for attic insulation doesn't cover it. So perhaps we could take that up with them. I'd appreciate if that could be done. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Baker.
Back in. I think there should be a letter going from this council to the department, because we have proven we have one of the best staffs in housing there. We're one of the few councils that spent all our money in the normal grants. And there is a structure there within the council, in the in-house grants, there's a list of builders. And if money is provided, definitely it's proven that it will be spent. And I think it's only an excuse from the department, because I know personally in the back end of the year there was a letter down how much he is sending us back in the normal grants, and that spurred it on that we made sure that every penny would be spent. And the big problem we have is money coming late in the year and then it won't be spent, and it's an excuse for the department to say then, well, oh, you didn't spend what you got last year. So I think a letter should be going from the council here. Thank you.
Thank you. That motion, I think we'll all agree with that.
Can I add there?
Sorry,
Chairman, can I add there, just to clarify, for 2020, the council got €412,886.50 by way of department allocation, and that the original allocation was €251,499.78, and we looked, because we were continuing to spend the money, we looked for an increased allocation, and we ended up getting another 161,000 odd. So we got over 412,000 last year, and we have already been on to the department this year looking for a similar or greater allocation. So just to clarify that for the members.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Still practically $250,000 shortfall from 4 years ago.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to motion number 16, seconded by Councillor Clark. Councillor Queenan, you have the floor.
Thank you. We received a report, a detailed report, and I want to, at the outset, pay tribute to the fire service for the work they've done over the years in difficult circumstances. I'm somebody that always supports the estimates and supports property tax, and I understand full well there's a financial burden on the local authority in this case and in other cases. However, in particular in the Collins area, there quite a number of people got bills which they believe, and I believe, that are totally unfair. They had nothing to do with the fire. Their own property has been damaged because of that fire. They have also lost in the farm payment has been reduced, and now they're being threatened with Stubbs Cassette, and I think that is unfortunate. And I would ask the council, this seems to be a new departure from the local authority. Granted, they have to try and balance the books, but there are innocent people in this who definitely had nothing to do with this fire, and their own property has been damaged. I acknowledge that the month of May last year was extremely warm weather, and everything was on the grass and all the bogs were it was only a matter of a second and they were going up in flames. But I think it's unfair, and quite a number of people here that they're being asked to pay for a fire that they have nothing to do with. And I would hope that the council will reflect and look again at the bills that have been. Some people have got bills of 2,000, 4,000, which are frightening. Has created a lot of concern on these people. And as I said, I would be somebody, if I felt in any way that there weren't victims, I wouldn't put this motion down. So I would hope that the powers that be would look again at these bills and look at the people. And despite the fear now that has been created because of all of this, and when you get a letter from saying that if you don't pay your bill within 5 days, we're handed on to Stubbs Cassette, that is serious, because that could have a black mark against you when you go looking for finance again in the future. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman, and I want to wholeheartedly support the motion, and I think Councillor Queenan has covered a lot of it, and I won't cover it again, but I spoke to one farmer in particular that has land around the forestry, and the forestry was burnt, and it cost him $4,500 to repair the fence between him and the forestry, and he got a bill for $3,600, and the fire people never stood on his land. He never asked them to come on his land, and he's out $7,500, which is totally unfair. And that situation is replicated in many situations in the Collins area. And I'd support Councillor Queenan that this is a burden that has to be covered by the state. I think that those individual farmers, which are in no ways responsible for the fire, can't be held responsible for the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arthur Gibbons, is your hand up? Your microphone, Councillor Gibbons. Put on your mic.
The question I want to ask in relation to this, and I don't come from an agricultural background, but it was always, even living in the town, I've known that farmers have cleared their land through the years with gauze fires, that lit gauze fires and whatever else, and that's that aspect of things. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened in this case, but that's kind of, I remember at the time when that incident happened, that was the very first thing, and I heard people talking about it, saying, oh, the farmers again with their gauze fires and whatever else. But one question that I want to ask, was the Gardaí, did they carry out an investigation in relation to this fire between themselves and the fire department, the fire chief? Because I feel myself that it should be, I can understand the whole thing that the cost of what the fire department, it costs to put them out there in relation to it. That's going to come out of the budget of the council. But I support the motion on the recommendations of the Gardaí and the fire officers' report that it wasn't gauze fires that's created that problem and that expense on the farmers in the area. But the only thing I could really say in relation to it, I could support the motion if there was a Garda report and there was a fire chief's report, but otherwise I think myself that we are playing with taxpayers' money here, and I feel myself that it'd be kind of reckless as a council just to hand out money on the save, people saying I didn't do this, I didn't do that. I think myself it does need a Garda investigation and the fire chief. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Similar has happened on the border between ourselves and Roscommon, and I know there's a number of farmers and they're highly stressed over the whole lot. But I see the big problem, no one knows how it started, and just the climate and things the way it was. And I know the fire service has its jobs to do, but I still think the person gets a bill of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. It can be very stressful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, Carol, just to support the motion as well, and just to say that I see the difficulty, I suppose, for Sligo County Council in the amount of money that's involved here in all of these areas. And I recognise that our fire department do great work, and just to recognise and appreciate the work that they do. But to be honest, you have farmers who, some of them are elderly, and they're farming this ground for a long time. They haven't set the fires, and I think, look, we all know that. But at the same time, to get letters like that with Stubbs Gazette on it can be extremely stressful. It's stressful for anybody, but to get them type of letters coming through the door is stressful on the person themselves. It's stressful on the families, and I don't think it's the right way to move forward with this type of thing. Yes, I do appreciate the council have a job to do, and I do also appreciate that this is a lot of money. So I don't think Sligo County Council should be out this money and should have to fit the bill. I do agree with that, but I think in moving things forward, I think these letters can be frightening. And look, I know the council are trying to do everything they can, but at the same time, I would feel that the state should intervene in paying this money, and not leaving the council out for it either. But certainly, you know, these farmers they weren't responsible for the fire, in my opinion, so they shouldn't be responsible in paying for it either.
Councillor Healy.
Yeah, just on what Councillor Taylor says, as well as that, there's a financial loss to the farmer now as well, is because he won't be able to use his ground after the fire. And the department then cuts back his payments. We've seen it down in Killary and all that happening as well when the forest fire happened down there. At the end of the day, I'm sure there was an investigation carried out on it. I'm sure we will have a report from the chief. But at the end of the day, as we says, innocent people here are the ones now that has picked up the bill, will have to pick up the bill here for somebody else's vandalism.
Thank you. Mr. Confeder.
I suppose the difficulty here is, and it's always the situation with Gorse fires, no one's ever responsible for it. You know, that's just the reality of what happens. So no one is responsible for it. The fire service have to go out there. This was a particular difficult situation. It's been indicated in the report that the costs that have been recharged are only a fraction of the costs that we incurred. On top of that, we had to bring in the fire service from Mayo to support us in that. There's no charge for them because there's an arrangement there between local authorities that when one has an emergency, we reciprocate and give support. So there was a significant cost incurred by Mayo County Council and borne by them that isn't being taken into account here. The fact is, anyone who's dealt with the fire services and charges over the years knows that we're reasonable in relation to dealing with people, and that's always the case. And some of the people have already paid their bills. So we will be reasonable to deal with anyone. We don't have the option of asking anyone else to pay for this. We can't go to the state. The rules are there. We have to apply the rules, and that's just the situation that it is. And this was a particular difficult. There were properties saved here because of the action of the fire services. The cost of the properties that were saved, we could have had a fatality on this thing. We had one firefighter who was taken ill at the actual scene, not someone in Sligo County Council, but as I said, we were supported by other local authority staff. So look, it's not easy. We have to deal with the reality of the situation that's there. The costs that have been charged are only a fraction of what was incurred by the public purse in relation to the matter. We will deal reasonably with anyone who engages with us, and that has been the case with those who have engaged with us so far, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Motion agreed. Motion 16, motion 17, Councillor Taylor.
I want to be abstain from that for the last motion.
Sorry?
I want to abstain.
Oh, from the last one, okay, that's fine. Motion 17, Councillor Taylor, Minister for Children Equality, of a seconder. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Caherlock. Look, first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to all frontline staff and essential workers for carrying us through this pandemic so far. But I've been contacted by a number of businesses in this sector. And Caherlock, the early learning and school age childcare sector, they're working in some cases without social distancing, in most cases with no social distancing, our PPE gear, and they're requesting that they be moved up the current vaccine list to 0.6. They're currently at 0.11, and I believe support should be put in place for priority testing. This sector reopened on the 29th of June 2020 to support frontline and essential workers, and have continued to do so. And I'm asking for this council support for the sector to ensure that supports are put in place to protect the business's staff and especially the children who are the most important in all of this. And I have said before that this vaccination document or list, it should be a live document and should be subject to change because of the ever-changing issues that we are experiencing every day with this virus. But I'm asking for the council support. I'm asking to write to the Minister for support for the early years sector. And I do understand as well that there are other sectors looking for similar support, and that's why I would call for the document to be a live document and that it would be subject to change.
Thank you. Councillor Baker. Just support the motion. That motion is agreed. Sorry, Councillor Bree.
I have to say, I have a concern about a motion like this, because there are many sectors out there and they all want to be prioritised. And we could put in a motion about them all. But my view is that we should be accepting the recommendations of NEFIT. Whatever NEFIT is recommending to the government, I will go with that. And therefore I would have a reluctance to say any particular sector should be prioritised if it's in conflict with NEFIT advice. And I think we should leave it to the experts. I know we all have our concerns here, but I don't think we're going down the proper path as a council to be intervening or interfering in this. I think government have a difficult enough issue to deal with, and I would hope that they would take on board the recommendations of NEFIT and apply them. That's my particular issue with this motion. I certainly would have sympathy for the sector, but I wouldn't like to interfere, and I wouldn't like to be associated with any motion that would interfere. Thanks, Cathaoirleach. So I'll be abstaining on it.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have an issue with what Councillor Bree is saying. Of course, he's entitled to his opinion, and I have said as well that there are a lot of sectors looking for change, and I do believe that we have that. The issues with this virus are changing every day, and they're presenting us with different difficulties every day. As I say, this sector had been in contact with me, so I put the motion forward, and I'd like to leave the motion there. I believe we should write to the minister, and look for support for this. But as I say, I fully respect Councillor Bree's views as well.
Okay, members agreed. Moving on, motion number 18. I'll second that. Councillor Taylor, and there's a report.
Yeah, I'd like to thank.
No sound there.
Sorry. And I welcome the fact that 2,500 odd premises around, we'll say the town lands around the Sligo town area are to be connected in Q3 and Q4 of this area of this year. This still leaves over 12,300 premises in the county without access to proper broadband, and some with no access to broadband at all. There's huge concern right now with people being asked to work from home, as we know, we've mentioned it before. Other family members that need broadband for education at all levels in their homes, and they're experiencing great difficulty at this time. I would like to, just at this stage, compliment Nigel Carter for all the work he's doing as broadband officer in this council. He's very, very efficient and very reliable, and he always deals with all the issues that are brought to him. I would ask the councillors of all parties in this council keep our county high on the priority list, and lobby to have this infrastructure brought here as soon as possible. And we need to work together, and I think this is hugely important right now. We were told recently when we had a presentation here that surveying would be done in this county by the end of last year. Now, I know we experienced difficult times last year, but I know surveying isn't complete yet. There are a lot of people in rural areas that cannot understand, why they're not connected when it's within a few kilometres or a kilometre of them coming each side of the road, and they're not fully connected. I would have thought that this would be the simplest thing to do, connect up all these. So listen, I know what I've asked for in points 1, 2 and 3 have been difficult to answer. I do thank the council for the report that they have sent, but I believe that we should all be lobbying and working as hard as we can on behalf of the people of this county to get this infrastructure here as soon as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Taylor, and I second that motion, and I agree with everything you've said, Councillor Taylor. And it's very frustrating, and I know I'm one of the people myself that's been told by when you go to some of these companies to get broadband, and you're being told that there's that fibre is going along the roadside across from your house and you cannot connect to it. It's very, very frustrating. And we all see the rollouts and the good news, and look, other counties are getting it, but it is very, very frustrating. And I speak to people, as Councillor Taylor as well, that, you know, people that they're switching between different companies trying to get a decent broadband connection. And I think it's very frustrating because, you know, we see where some other countries, you know, maybe not as affluent as Ireland, and they're getting mega speeds up to 100 megabytes. And, you know, I've seen it, and I've spoken to people that have young people at home now, and they're trying to watch, or whether they're trying to work from home, or whether they're trying to do schoolwork from home, and this continuous break where it's streaming, and the speeds are very, very slow. Now, we all appreciate this, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and there's a lot more maybe different things on in a house, whether it's 4 or 5 laptops and phones and whatever, but I certainly think we all collectively need to be pushing to ensure that Sligo, and when I say Sligo, you know, we have to ensure that the rural areas get a decent broadband service, because, you know, there are a lot of people. It is going to change now. I think the way work is going to be done, that people are going to be, whether working full-time from home or part-time working from home, to ensure that Sligo is high on the priority, that we need to ensure any of the chapter Dolly that we're speaking to, that we keep pushing that the rollout of broadband and fibre broadband in County Sligo is high on the agenda. Councillor Casterly.
I'd just like to be associated with the motion. Thank you.
That's grand. Thank you. You happy enough, so Councillor Taylor, motion number 19? Councillor Taylor and Councillor Baker.
It's just asking Minister Abbott where I'd be coming from on this motion is, I know a lot of our GPs and health centres are going to be doing the vaccine, and if there's a case that there was vaccines over, that the people with additional needs, adult people with additional needs, that there will be catered for. That's where I'd be coming from with the motion. I know there is strategy on that there, but because nowadays there's a lot more people living within the community with additional needs, and I think they're every bit as say as the person 70 or 85, they're in that risk category as well, in my view. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just to say again that this is probably about the document as well, and how I feel that it should be a live working document. You know, I do believe that some cases with young adults with additional needs, I believe they should be further up the vaccination list as well. And in such difficult times and ever-changing times, I think it's difficult for these young people and with families with children with additional needs as well.
Thank you. Councillor Casterly, your hand is up. That's agreed. Moving on, so motion number 20, Councillor Clark. Can I get a seconder?
Thanks, Gary.
Councillor Baker, thank you.
Just at the first half of our meeting last week, you know, there was a lot of motions in relation to having a border poll, and while I support those motions, I think it's proper that we get an all-Ireland economy, a 32-island economy and food security in place first. And as I speak to you today now, thousands of lambs have come across the border from Northern Ireland, driving down the price of Irish lamb here in the 26. Yet within 3 miles of each other in Donegal, Carrigan's factory and the one in Derry, 3 miles apart, and the price of beef in the Derry factory is 50 cents higher than the price of beef in the Carrigan's factory and indeed all the 26 counties. And I feel that millions of litres of milk have come across the border this morning to be processed in Ireland, and which will carry the Irish logo and export it to China and different places as Irish milk powder. And the lamb that has come across the border this morning will go out again to France as Irish lamb. But we do not here in the 26 counties get the reciprocal when it comes to Irish beef. We cannot send stores that are reared here, the best in the world. We can send them to Italy and we can send them to Spain, we can send them to Hungary, but we can't send them to Northern Ireland to be fattened and killed and recognised as quality assured Irish beef in the Northern Ireland. And this has gone on this last 10 years, even when both jurisdictions were in Europe. And I think that it's time now that if we really want to persuade the farmers in the north and the unionist people that we can work to get better as a 32 Ireland economy nation, I think we have to get our industries and our agriculture and everything else working on the one path first. And I'd ask for our Minister for Agriculture to engage with the Northern Minister, Mr. Poots, and get this sorted. I mean, it's crazy that an Irish heifer that's reared here in Sligo or Donegal or Leitrim can cross the border to the north and get killed as a guaranteed quality assured animal in the north. And it can be done in Italy, in France, in Spain, in Hungary, and any other jurisdiction in Europe, but it can't be done a few miles up the road. And I think if we're talking about United Ireland, if we're talking about a border patrol, let's get the fundamentals right first.
Thank you. Councillor Baker. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to support Councillor Clark as well, and just to say that Arriva and Lakeland is buying milk in Northern Ireland, paying the very same price is they're paying to their own producers, their own shareholders, the people that set up the co-ops in this part of the country, and we are sending up beef and not getting what it really deserves up there in price.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy. No. Okay, his hand is up, sorry. Okay. Yeah, well, his hand is up, sorry. Okay. Moving on to motion number 21. Councillor O'Grady. Councillor Bree, second.
I put this motion down. I walk on the wonderful Western bypass, a fabulous piece of infrastructure that this council can be extremely proud of. But apart from it being a Western bypass for traffic, it's now one of the most used amenities, I'll call it, for walking and for cycling and families out cycling. And the other evening, I met a lady on a walking aid, an elderly woman on a walking aid, and I stopped and had a chat with her, and she said, it's terrific. She has an even surface, and she's among people. She's not afraid of walking on it. But there is an issue that has arisen. When you come to the Mahraboy roundabout, which is on the new road at Oakfield, some of the people go out the new road and come down the old Oakfield road. And between the roundabout and which, if you are coming down the Oakfield road, you have Mullins Land, there's no footpath. And then you come on, there's a footpath that brings you partly past Oakfield. And again, at Capini's house and around that corner, there's no footpath. Now, I know it's a very difficult corner, but it's an area that's been used never before, I think. Did I ever see such? I counted 65 people the other evening in a pace of a few minutes using this bypass. So I would hope that there be some funding put in place to just do what's necessary to make it safer there, coming off the Mahraboy roundabout, down past Mullins Land, then you come to Oakfield, there is a bit of a footpath, there's a piece missing on the corner, and then down the whole other way it's fine till you come to the Ballyduggan roundabout, which is at Murray's shop. So I would just ask that that would be considered. But again, I want to acknowledge the fabulous piece of infrastructure that has been put in place there for the people of that area and for all, and the amount of traffic it has taken of the Larkill Road and things. So I would like to hear what I wasn't able to open the report.
Oh, no. Right. Yeah, Councillor Bray.
Very briefly, just second the motion, and Councillor O'Grady has certainly well outlined the case. The new road is an invitation, I suppose, to more people to walk up there, and the increase in the number of pedestrians walking the roads there is significant. And of course, there's been a significant increase in vehicular traffic also. So it does cry out for some improvement, and I just formally support the motion, second the motion.
Thank you. Mr.
Cathaoirleach, the report circulated read as follows. Road Design is considering options for the upgrade of this section of road, and a grant application has been made to the Department of Transport. In the interim, the Council will consider more immediate options to improve public lighting and footpath linkages along this section of road. Thank you, Gerd.
I welcome that, Mr. Kilfeather. That certainly will make a terrific walking space for the people whose safety certainly I had concerns for.
Councillor Healy.
I just want to support the motion, but I also like to bring to the attention of the CEO. I was contacted by a number of people regarding the footpath, and there's a cycle lane, but there's not enough people are walking on the cycle lanes now. So is there any way we can spray the ground to show where the bikes are and where people are meant to be walking? A lot of people think it's for social distancing because of the width of it. So I've got a couple of calls from people regarding that. But it is a great outlet and it is a great job. Thank you.
And it's softer underfoot, the cycle lane too.
Yeah.
It's not as hard on the hips.
Thanks, members. Last motion, number 22.
Can I just come in on that last one?
You want to second that motion, Councillor Gibbons, yeah?
Yeah. Again, have we a report on that, Mr. Cliff? Sorry, no.
Again, Cathaoirleach, the report circulated read as follows. The area engineer will carry out an inspection of the footpaths and the road surface. The upgrade of footpaths and the road surface in Marymount Estate is not included in the current multi-annual discretionary programme. However, if additional funds do become available, it will be included for consideration. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
I welcome that. Again, walking more than ever. I come down through Marymount at some stage, at some of the walks I do, and certainly some of the footpaths and road is needs to be upgraded, and I welcome that because there's quite a number of elderly people living in that estate as well, and their footing may be just not as good as it should be. So I welcome that, and thanks, Mr. Feather. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gibbons.
So here, look, I have to support the motion in relation to Marymount. I've been up there on a number of occasions, and there is parts of there where the path really does need repairs, and the road isn't in that great a condition. Now, I know it even myself because, how would I put it, I do have to watch very carefully where I do tread at times, and I suppose the first thing that really stands out anytime I go into these areas is the nice of a rough surface or whatever else, because it's not very nice when you take a spill on something like that. And I often imagine for the elderly people, and there is a fairly good number of elderly people living within that area, settled people who are reared families and things like that, and I'd be very glad to second that motion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now, members, votes of sympathy. I have quite a few here in front of me, so I won't go through them all because I know we've one or two items on any other business to bring up. So votes of sympathy is agreed. Votes of congratulations agreed. Conference training agreed. Now, to note the summary of proceedings of conferences attended in accordance with section 1425F of the local government of agreed. We've all received correspondence, matters arising from the minutes, and under AOB, Mr. Kilfeather just wants to say something.
Members, we had arranged at the municipal district meeting for Ballymote, Tubbercurry next week. We would have the roadworks programme as a headed item, and we had also arranged special meetings for Sligo and the Sligo Drumcliff. Now, unfortunately, we still haven't received our grant allocations from the Department of Transport. We'd normally have them around the 20th of January each year, but there is a delay this year, and the indication is that it could be the end of next week before we have them. So for that reason, what we would be proposing with the agreement to the members is that we would put the roadworks programme on as a headed item for the March 15th meeting of both the Sligo Municipal District and the Sligo Drumcliff Municipal District, and we would engage with the Coherlock of Ballymote Tubacurry and arrange a special roadworks meeting for that week for Ballymote Tubacurry and get them all dealt with that week. Thank you, Carola.
That's agreed. Agreed. Councillor Baker, just you want to bring something in on the AOB? That's grand. Dealt with. Councillor Gibbons, just you with something you wanted to mention on the AOB?
I did indeed. What I want to mention is the junction there at Cartron Cross, and I've done a number of interviews in relation with Ocean FM in relation to the progress reports, trying to give it the best that I could and find out information where I could in relation to it. But it was brought to my attention that a number of accidents has happened on that junction with the works that's going on it. Now, personally myself, on what I would say in relation to it, it's concerning if there's accidents on it. And what I will be asking for is maybe a report to be brought through for the next meeting, is how many accidents there has been since this work has started, vehicular accidents and pedestrian accidents, and compare it, we'd say, to the year before the work started, because I do know that it was a treacherous road, always was at the junctions that's in it. And the other aspect that I would like to ask in relation to it, it's in relation to a safety officer. And I really feel that a safety officer needs to be more so now present on that junction while the work is going on. The work that is going on in the junction has to be done. It is being done in the way, how would I put it, it's going to be worth it when it is done. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. But I do think that a safety officer needs a public safety officer. The member of the public, if a member of the public falls, trips, or whatever else, they're able to bring it to that person is recognised on site. And it's the same with any vehicular accidents that will be on it. And I feel myself that at this moment, it's a report that I am looking for in relation to it. The work, I'm not criticising the work, I'm not criticising any aspects of it, but if there is a situation that is there that's brought by the public to the attention of the safety officer, or if there is a near miss there, that they're able to go and investigate before something serious happens. Now, the one thing that I have noticed now, I may have just missed it, but I do feel that there is a great need for a 20 kilometres or a 15 kilometre mile an hour sign to be put up going down through that workspace, because reality for the safety of the workers and the public, I witness traffic going down there every day, particularly big juggernaut lorries, and they're going down at 30 miles an hour and they're going in through narrow lanes and whatever else. And if anybody comes out in front of them, a person doesn't stand a chance. And that is not down to the works in the area. That's not down to Sligo County Council. That's down to drivers not taking heed of what they're doing. I'm not saying accidents don't happen out from that, but the one thing that I would ask in relation to it is that the signs would go up, because it's, even if it's only to protect the council or protect the workmen that is there working on that site, that a 15 kilometre or a 20 kilometre speed zone would go up and that it is enforced. But I would ask more than anything else that a safety officer, a public safety officer, is put on that site.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Baker.
Just to come in, we seem to be drifting a little bit the last few meetings. We have a lot of road stuff coming in, could go to the area meeting, and in respect of the officials and that, I think we can get, and it's only for these couple of months while we get to a better ease of restrictions. It's not curtailing anyone in what to put in, but maybe just everyone to look at what we're putting in and see if we and try and get through it as brisk as we can. And it's grand that we're able to come in and attend a meeting, and I think we still can work that a little bit faster. Thank you.
Yeah, well, look, and concurring with what Councillor Baker said, and look, as here, look, I don't want to, keep harping on about it, but if we can all try and bring localised issues to municipal meetings, it'll shorten the meeting for everyone. Now, I appreciate and thank everybody for their support today that we've got through this meeting now. But, the more stuff we can bring to municipals that are localised issues, it'll shorten our monthly meetings. And, we can still try and get the media to publicise the issues that we are raising. So I want to thank everybody for their support today and hope to see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cahill.